just don't know. I don't know. I'm looking, yeah.
Mark Clark, that's classic. I love it.
And welcome to a special edition of the Mark Clark Show. Tonight we're going to be talking about, or tonight or today, whenever you're watching this, we'll be addressing an issue that is so real in our communities. And we're talking about opioids. And, on the show today, we're going to talk about an amazing documentary that's out. We're going to talk to some guests who are in the field and know the importance of getting the word out, getting the message about the treatment and also the concern in our community. So we're joined by Larry Gourdine is joining us. Larry, how are you, sir?
Outstanding.
Outstanding. You look sharp. Also, Garcia Williams is also joining us tonight, the executive director of the Medi. And welcome, Garcia. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And with Larry being outstanding, I think I'm just about there. So I'm going to say I'm outstanding as well.
Oh, you can't beat two outstandings, right? And so let's get it started with you, Garcia. Tell us about the Medi and what it does.
Thank you so much. And again, and thank you for having us. It's very important to have a voice to the community, and being on with you tonight gives us an opportunity to share the mission and vision of the Medi Community Resource Center. We were founded about almost 7 years ago. It was our thought leader, Audrey Wetzel, is the founder and CEO of the Medi Community Resource Center. And I'm really fortunate to serve as executive director. And the Medi was pretty much founded to deal with the issues surrounding social determinants of health, and understanding that there are wraparound services and resources that can change and create more positive health outcomes. And we do so in a number of different ways. Primarily in using technology to connect those resources to the community, but then also championing and educating and sharing important issues within our community, such as this issue that we're talking about for this month, being National Recovery Month, the opioid epidemic and how it is impacting our community. So that's the elevator speech. That's the shortened version of what we do at the Medi, but we are a resource center to support the needs. And this month, particularly September, being National Recovery Month, gives us a greater mission and reason for sharing information with our community.
I love it. National Recovery Month. That's something to note, and we'll be talking about that. Larry, tell us about your role and tell us about who you are. I had a chance to meet Larry earlier today in the elevator pitch. You did an amazing job, Larry, so I'm asking you to do the same thing again.
Okay. Well, again, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Garcia and the Medi, for this opportunity to really bring to the community and bring forth an issue that's of dire consequences. We know addiction and opioids, they destroy individuals and they destroy families. But we want to sound the alarm and the call to action, because we're in a true crisis. This is now destroying our communities from the inside out. And we truly have to come to the table and come together as a community across all socioeconomic spectrums, but particularly here in the DC metropolitan area, but particularly here in DC. There are a number of advocates and stakeholders, and just know that there are people on the front line that are really doing the work, but it's just not enough. And we really have to bring this to the community. The community has to show up. And I want to thank you, Mark, for this opportunity to bring this to the community and to really drive this awareness and see if we can get this call to action mobilizing.
Well, Garcia and Larry, I definitely will pledge to do all I can do, because, working, I'm in Baltimore, working in Baltimore again, but I first came to Baltimore in about 1999, 2000. And I think that was, I worked in St. Louis previously. I guess most cities have challenges when it comes to, drugs and addiction. But I think especially Baltimore, the monster, and in fact, DC too, the DMV area, including Baltimore. And so I was really kind of like exposed to the tragedy of addiction. And I work closely, with I Can, We Can in Baltimore and different organizations. And then in DC, the same, with Allison being on the news in DC. So, I think we're at the point, not only in age, but it's an experience where you look at these challenges and you have to start asking yourself, well, what am I doing? We see the stories, we see how sadly the way addicts are covered by news stations and news outlets, usually unsympathetic and really not touching on the real issue and the systemic issue, the lack of treatment facilities for certain people. And we can even get into, guys, we're going to talk about the documentary, which is amazing.
Yes.
But what the documentary really kind of like pointed out that I think sadly African Americans are very aware of is that, addiction has been a challenge for decades. And it was almost as if nobody was paying attention until white folks started to suffer with addiction. And not just white people, let's talk about economically. Economically, when the middle class, when moms, soccer moms and people started to suffer from addiction, all of a sudden, even the government, as Larry, you told me, I think for the first time, the government got involved with some money. And so Garcia and Larry, you guys, we want to hop in on that, or do we want to talk about the documentary, or wherever you want to go, Garcia? Let's go there.
Well, I just want to touch one point, and there's some commonality that we have on this line when you said Baltimore, because I am originally from Baltimore, but I live in Charleston, South Carolina now. So a lot of what we see and what we know is across the spectrum of most major cities. But when you speak about Baltimore, it's near and dear to my heart. And Larry and I have talked a little bit about, what the impact in the DC area is, and we refer to the DMV. But sometimes, Baltimore is kind of sectioned off in that way. But I've lived it, I've seen it in terms of how this issue has grown. And we can cite statistics all day, but behind the numbers are living, breathing people and families who are hurting, and those who have lost loved ones. And, we're going to talk about the documentary, and I'm going to tie into that very quickly. But the idea is that we are our brother's keeper. And if there's anything that we can do to stem the tide of what's affecting our communities, all of us have to do it. None of us on the line right now are licensed medical professionals, but we all have a part to play. And growing up in Baltimore, I've always considered myself to be a grassroots advocate. And, my mom was a very strong advocate in the Baltimore community, Georgine Edgerton. And what she showed me was that you have to take care of those that can't take care of themselves. So that's how we view ourselves at the Medi. And this documentary shows that care, compassion, outreach, and understanding is very key. You mentioned something about the socioeconomic conditions and situations, is that addiction affects all of us. And it doesn't matter if you are affluent or, if you're coming from, the lower rung of the economic ladder, you're going to be the same thing. You're an addict as you're viewed in the eyes of others. But whatever we can do to bring about a greater awareness of that stigma that's associated with addiction. And that stigma is something that I know is very near to Larry's heart, because he lives it every day. He sees it, because there are those who are struggling, but there's a stigma associated with addiction. And we want to bring them into recovery so that we can make them better, so that they are not stuck in that space. But recovery is really important. And that's what we want to share about the documentary, and how it focuses on the need for recovery and how we engage in recovery for those who have a need. So Larry, let's talk a little bit about, if you can, if I can bounce it to you, about the stigma associated with addiction. That would be helpful for I know our listeners as well.
Well, I'd like to pick up on what Mark said about Baltimore. We know Baltimore and DC is really two sides of the same coin. They're sister cities, and they're plagued with the same issues. One thing I really want to highlight about addiction is just not addiction. Addiction is just not a choice. Chronic addiction is not something that somebody decides to do. Well, I'm going to go out and get addicted today, right? Yeah. It's not the casual users, if you will, of substances. There is a chronic component called trauma and toxic stress. And it's really, the vast amount of chronic addiction is really self-medication. they're medicating the pain, physically and emotional pain that's unaddressed through the lack of access to trauma-informed care in our mental health system. And so, what we're asking today is for everyone to really just take a different look and just try to be more compassionate and more understanding. Look at the person behind what you see in terms of somebody that's addicted to, to alcohol or opioids, whatever the substance may be. And that's the real message here. And the documentary, and I just really want to, hats off to Greg Williams, who's a award-winning producer of Anonymous People, for bringing this documentary, and the cast for bringing this documentary to the community and giving us an opportunity at no charge, giving us unlimited access to this documentary to show it and present it to the community. It is really phenomenal in that it truly certainly addresses and talks about the issue, but it really is inspiring. It's a documentary of hope, if you will. So tipping the pain scale, the name doesn't really give it away, but it's an amazing evening. It will be one of the best evenings you will have spent in the month of September, and it will give you a different perspective, and it will really fire you up about, what we're facing, but what the opportunity is, by just, and it's by knowledge. And if we can do one thing, just bring awareness, and we can get the community out. We got 600 seats at the Howard Theater to fill on Tuesday evening. You will walk away with a renewed hope and a call to action.
And Mark, if I may add one quick thing, and Larry brings up the great point about the documentary, because in the documentary, you see so much of yourself in it, as, the adage is, there before the grace of God go I. Is that, just one misstep or one something too much can take you over that edge where you become that addicted person, or the behaviors of that. So in my viewing of the documentary, it's understanding and having some compassion for those. And you mentioned earlier about, when it became such a crisis. We've lived it, and we see it every day. But when you see it and you look at it through the eyes of the producer and the participants in this documentary, in my opinion, it puts you on a whole different trajectory of how can I help that next person who was like me, but who went that next step to become addicted to those opioids. So it takes a lot.
And it really does. The documentary also raises questions or starts conversations that, it's weird, somehow we missed over all these years. Treating the emotional pain. Like Larry said, you don't just wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be addicted to a substance that makes me feel good. But we never really talk about, and this says in the documentary, we don't talk about treating the pain.
Yes.
And even with young people, how to deal with the pain at an early age, and not have to rely on things. Also, Mayor Marty Walsh, I wasn't familiar with his story, an elected official who's a recovering addict, but that insight that he's going to provide is a game changer, because you now have someone who can affect policy, who knows everything you need to know about what that person who happens to be addicted feels, the challenges that they face, and then being able to have effective strategies to treat. And again, the movie also, I think, makes you realize, people always say, I know people, especially white people, even friends, will be like, why is it always about race with you guys, right? Well, because America's always about race. And
always.
It was because we never dealt with the original sins of America, it always haunts us. And so let's keep it real. The fact that, Marty is a white guy from Boston gives him more power if he was Larry, because for whatever reason, more people listen to him, Also, I loved, again, the documentary, again, Tuesday night, you got to see it. I loved the interaction with the young people and talking about mindfulness. Again, concepts that we spin our wheels a lot. You know, we've learned that rote way of learning many years, and even the way we address, like you said, the war on drugs or this and that. We forgot. What we forgot was the humanity. What we forgot was the human element, right? And like you said, even when we see someone who happens to be an addict, the negative way that they have been characterized makes you look at them different. There's a crackhead. There's a meth head. I was just the other day, you know, in Baltimore, as y'all know, a young lady was nodding out, and she was nodding out by the train tracks. And, you know, you end up it's almost like you're in a zoo watching, you know, where's your humanity? And why didn't I grab her? She fell on the train tracks. She fell on the train. I watched her fall on the train tracks. What made me not, before she got closer, say, ma'am, or can I help you? Or dear, let me help you over here. I watched this go down. As we see, you know, we do this every day. And that tells you how, as a human, how detached we are. So, and then lastly, the documentary, you know, speaking of Baltimore, one of the early draft picks for the Ravens, who it looked like he wasn't going to make it because of his addiction issues. He actually is playing in the league, and he survived it. But even like it says, it kind of touches on, as you said, Garcia. It could have been anybody. It could be your child. No matter what economic side you come from, no matter who you are, it could affect, and it doesn't matter what age you are. Because I think in this world where there are more and more stressors, more and more people are becoming looking for ways to treat. And like you say, self-medication is a big player. And so, Larry, what are we seeing? You know, we kind of talked about how with the opioid addiction, the more people are paying attention to a certain degree, and instead of making the people who are suffering from addiction criminals, there is a more language of treatment. But Larry, what does it look like now, though, compared to, you know, before before it was that was the case? How does it look, and what are the people who look like, who come to you look like?
Well, the good news is that you know, because of the Obamacare and the 2009 Affordable Care Act, which you know, really put forth parity, mental health and addiction treatment parity. The good news is treatment is available. Treatment is available. It is accessible, and even with folks with no resources. However, it is getting people into treatment and getting them into treatment early. And that's why this awareness is so critical, is be able to recognize this and and be able to know where those resources are, and be able to work with individuals and families to help get these individuals into treatment, keep them in the treatment. But I just want to say, Mark, you know, one of the biggest barriers to treatment is the shame. You know, people don't realize it, but individuals who are, you know, suffering with chronic addiction, and by the way, it has now been defined as a chronic brain disease. So addiction now, we know the science has has been very definitive on this. It is a case of dopamine dysregulation. And just like diabetes or hypertension, addiction is a chronic brain disease. So it is a disease. And and it can be treated. And the manifestation of addiction is the behavior, which is just so abnormal to normal behavior. And that's what we see, and that's what we recall from. That's what we don't, you know, that's what we react to, as you just described so beautifully. But everybody should know that these individuals carry this incredible burden of shame. I mean, they are just really totally in shame. And it's such a deterrent because they don't understand, why am I this way? How did I get here? Why can't I get out of this cycle? Why am I doing this? The shame is just unimaginable, and which ties back into the stigma and is constantly reinforced. What's wrong with you? You came from a good family. Your mom and your daddy sent you to school. Man, get yourself together. It's just like telling somebody with diabetes, get yourself together, right? It doesn't work for diabetes and it doesn't work for addiction. It is real. And more often than not, particularly in our communities, it is a result of medicating toxic stress and pain from trauma, unaddressed trauma. And it becomes generational.
Mm-hmm.
It is very complex. But we really got to come out on this, and we really got to get the word to the community, and the community just have to stop and take a look at this and try to understand the scientific. Not trying to make anybody a researcher, but they need to understand the medical basis behind this and all the complicating factors, because the manifestations is behavior, lack of judgment, yes, no, stop, go, no discernment, no control, right? And all those things we see as antisocial behavior, and we don't want to be associated with it. Okay, but just know that is not the individual that you see. That is literally the disease talking. The way diabetes talk to you is with high blood sugar, right?
Wow.
And that's how diabetes talk to you, right? Just persistent thirst, and eventually cardiovascular symptom. The way addiction talk to you and what you see is the behavior, but that's not the individual. That's
Mm-hmm.
and is a chronic relapsing. They really, it's the first thing it affects is how you think and how you act. And so if we can just get that out, we would just make a giant step forward in addressing this our community challenges.
Garcia, I think again, now working on television now and almost seeing news firsthand, I feel like there's like you said, Larry, I think that the human gets lost a lot, and then the surface gets talked about. For instance, last week we did a story about how in New York they are now carding kids because they can't buy the canned whipped cream because some kids get high on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I think those kind of stories to me, it's almost like it's not only kind of a throwaway story. We're talking about that. Oh my God, can you believe they don't let kids buy whipped cream? When we really need to be talking about, like you said, Larry, the behavior, the
Right,
solution, the
right, right.
treatment.
Yep.
Recently there's a comedic beef going on, and this prominent comedian and this other prominent comedian really kind of exposed, like you said, Larry, talk about shame and embarrassment. He exposed this recent comedian who just had a special, and he's supported by Dave Chappelle as this old school term, guys, fiend, right? Now this comedian that he exposed as a fiend, who's in his 50s and right now is celebrating he's got a new special out and stuff. What I thought about Garcia was, number one, back to what you said, Larry, he had this behavior that I'm sure he didn't want the public to know about.
Right.
So this other comedian kind of has exposed him, and so, which is quote unquote embarrassing, but it might save his life, because at the end of the day, as a 50-something-year-old guy who's overweight, and we see this happen all the time, somebody checks out and you go, oh, I never knew, right? I didn't know. And I thought about, Larry, what they always say, when you're wealthy or you're famous, if you have an issue, it just adds on to that issue. So if you have never addressed the behavior and you have all the money in the world, it actually puts you in peril, probably. But again, the documentary really, just touches on, I think, just the human aspect of this thing. And Garcia, now that we're talking more about it, and there is the messaging is about treatment. Is the biggest obstacle getting the word out marketing? What are give us the biggest challenges that you're having now that there is, in a sense, a budget to get the word for people that get treatment?
Well, I think it is meeting our community where they are,
Where
and
they are.
the education of an educational aspect of it. Exactly as you said, we see most of this in our homes. And I'm just trying to draw a parallel when you talk about the issues surrounding homeland security, where they say if you see something, say something. So the idea, now you may see some of these same behaviors, and in the past you may have said, like Larry mentioned earlier, oh, that's just so and so, that's just exactly how he is, and that's what he
Yeah.
does. But you don't really recognize what's driving those behaviors. So I think creating a greater awareness, giving good concrete examples of what it looks like. And that's what this documentary does extremely well. It addresses what those causals are and helps you to maybe draw some parallels to things that you've seen before, that now you know what it represents and you can do something to address it. During throughout the month of September, again, which is National Recovery Month, the Medi is conducting a number of virtual sessions to educate our community. Among those is Narcan training. What do we do if we see someone who's in an overdose state? As you said before, the situation with the young lady on the platform, there's probably nothing that you could have done to, alleviate that issue except to protect her, from safety. But the idea is that if you see that type of behavior on a more consistent basis with someone that you're closely associated with, then you can address it in some way, because now you know what other issues are around surrounding those matters that they're dealing with. So I would say, messaging that is directed toward those to allow them to take the appropriate action and to maybe bring that individual through. We can't save everyone at the same time, but if we can save a life and make a difference in a life that would help them to transition to a recovery scenario, to find those resources to help them, that's what our ultimate goal is. So I would say, if anything, it's messaging, meeting them where they are in terms of our community, and providing some alternatives. I mean, I go back to the same point as Larry said, no one wakes up every day and it's like, hey, gee, you know what? I want to be an addict today. I'm going to consume X number of drugs to take me over the edge. It's only to dull the pain and to minimize the pain of what it is that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So I want everyone to come out and join us on Tuesday at the Howard Theater, which is 620 T Street in Northwest DC. The doors open at 5 p.m. I'm sorry, the doors open at 4:30, and we actually start the production at 5. If you miss it, I would say that it is definitely a missed opportunity, because we have the old adage, if you know better, then you're going to do better. And how will you know if you don't take an opportunity to educate yourself? So tipping the pain scale is that educational opportunity for each of us during National Recovery Month. And if I can just say one additional thing, we had a session last week in Ward 8 at the Black Box Theater. And there were just personal testimonies from mothers and cousins and others in the family. We had a candlelight vigil, and the stories that they said. And one mother said that she never knew that her teenage daughter was engaged in any aspect of drugs. So if you know something, just that little something that you may have observed that you sort of ignored, this documentary will help to open your eyes to let you see more of what you didn't see. So I just implore you, don't miss this opportunity. Be in the number, join us to save a life. And it could be the life of someone that's close to you that you're actually living with in the same household.
Well, Garcia and Larry, thank you for joining us. Larry, do you have any parting words as we wrap things up? And again, get everybody ready for Tuesday
Absolutely.
night.
Well, the number one thing I want to add is that we know DC traffic, if you're running late, come on. We will leave the door open for you. So please, if you're running late, just come on. We'll keep those doors open for you. I want to just give a special thanks to Union Stage for providing the Howard Theater at no cost, to host this community event. Because as a nonprofit, yeah, we just would not have been able to, be able to host it, at the Howard Theater, and you need that kind of a setting, the historic Howard Theater. and you really need that kind of setting, for this. And and Mark, many thanks to you.
Yes.
And community, please come out. Families, I know you're hurting. You can call us. You can call on us. And if you need more information, if you need help, if you see something, please just call us, and we'll have information there, and we'd be glad to support you in any way we can.
So, Mark, I may add, I know we have the flyer that we'll share, and of course, we'll be able to push it out on social media, but you can find information about us at themedi.org, O-R-G, but I'm sure we'll be able to share that you can also include when we share this with your listening audience. But thank you again. And shout out to my family in Baltimore. It's always good to be connected with anyone who's related to me through the Baltimore community.
Well, and Garcia, I'm gonna have to do a check on you because I also worked in Charleston and worked in South Carolina, and so we our paths are all mixed in together. So that's pretty amazing. A small world, right?
Yes.
And again, this is on this platform, it's always open, and so all the things that you're doing, we'll be talking about it on this platform, promoting it everywhere we can. Just want you to know that you can always lean on us for that. And wherever I am here, my TV gig, and wherever else, because I definitely, like you say, I support what you guys are doing, and I definitely believe in the cause. And that cause is to help people heal. And so thanks again, Larry Gourdine. Thanks, Garcia Williams. And we will see everybody Tuesday night. Let's do this. Guys, have a great one, and thanks for joining us, okay?
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank
take
you.
care.